One desperate husband, one arrogant doctor, and a hospital full of patients. No one expected that his quiet revenge would shut everything down.
The midday sun spilled through the wide glass panes of the hospital, painting long streaks of light across the sterile white walls. The corridor smelled faintly of disinfectant, its silence broken only by the distant hum of machines and hurried footsteps. Through the entrance doors stumbled a young black woman, her body bowed under the weight of late pregnancy. One hand clutched her swollen belly, the other gripped tightly to her husband's arm. Each breath came ragged, shallow, as though the air itself was too heavy for her lungs. Her skin glistened with sweat, her face pale with strain, yet there was a quiet resilience in her eyes, a strength carved from endurance and hope. Her husband, tall and tense, matched her uneven pace, his grip firm but trembling. His gaze darted between her face and the long hallway ahead, searching desperately for help. Fear pressed hard against his chest, but he masked it with murmured reassurances, his voice breaking softly against the sterile air. Just a little longer, love. We're almost there. Each step toward the emergency ward felt heavier than the last, as though the walls themselves watched in silence, holding their breath for what was about to unfold. At the desk, a nurse lifted her eyes from a clipboard, her expression flat, almost annoyed. She looked at the woman doubled over in pain, then at her husband's pleading face. For a moment, hesitation flickered across her features, as if she were deciding whether their suffering was truly worth her time. Her voice, clipped and cold, carried no urgency. Please wait. Moments later, the attending doctor appeared, a man in his 50s with a white coat too crisp, shoes that clicked arrogantly against the linoleum floor. His gaze swept over the woman, not with concern, but with judgment. His lips curled in faint disdain before he spoke. She's exaggerating. We have more urgent cases. The words landed like a blade. The husband felt his stomach tighten, the familiar sting of injustice pressing against old wounds. Echoes of past slights, ignored voices, denied service, silent prejudice, flashed in his memory. He wanted to shout, but the weight of his wife leaning against him held him still. Her contractions came sharper now, twisting her body with silent agony. Tears slipped down her cheeks, unacknowledged. Around them, other patients looked away, eyes dropping to the floor, as though turning from the sight would absolve them of its cruelty. The husband's jaw tightened, but he did not raise his voice. Rage simmered beneath his skin, yet he forced it into stillness. Instead, he looked the doctor squarely in the eyes and asked again, softer this time, though his words quivered with urgency. Please, help my wife! The doctor folded his arms unmoved. Hospital protocol, he repeated with finality, as though the words alone built a wall too high to climb. He turned away, already dismissing them. The husband inhaled sharply, then reached into his pocket. His phone lit up in his hand, his fingers flying across the screen with deliberate precision. Each tap was quiet, controlled, yet carried the weight of a decision that could not be undone. A nurse nearby stole a glance, her expression shifting from indifference to unease. Another staff member froze mid-step, recognition flashing in his eyes. Their sudden tension rippled through the air, though nothing was said aloud. His wife gripped his arm, her nails pressing deep into his skin as another contraction tore through her body. Her voice cracked, pleading, "Don't leave me, please." He bent close, brushing her damp forehead with his lips. In a whisper only she could hear, he murmured, "Trust me." The fluorescent lights above began to flicker, first in a faint stutter, then in violent pulses that painted the hall in bursts of white and shadow. A nurse at the station frowned at her monitor as the screen froze, its cursor spinning endlessly before fading into black. Alarms shrieked through the corridors, shrill, urgent, unrelenting. Confusion rippled outward like fire. Doctors shouted orders that could not be carried out. Patients stirred in panic, some rising from chairs, others calling for loved ones. The hum of machines, the steady lifeline of the ward, died into silence. In minutes, the hospital was plunged into paralysis. No internet, no records, no functioning equipment. The arrogant doctor's face flushed red with fury. He stormed toward the husband, shoes pounding the tile, his voice slicing through the chaos. "What did you do?" The husband did not flinch. His phone glowed faintly in his hand, its screen already dark from completed commands. His expression was calm, almost chilling in its steadiness. At last, the truth cracked open. He wasn't just a desperate man. He was a cybersecurity engineer, trusted by the city's own health department. And with a few keystrokes, he had crippled the very system that had refused his wife care. The ward was drowning in chaos. Nurses darted between frozen monitors and powerless machines, their voices rising in frantic pleas. Patients cried out, some clutching chests, others gasping for breath. Yet in the middle of the storm, the husband stood immovable, his presence sharp and unyielding. His voice rang out, calm, yet heavy with thunder. "You refused to treat the mother of my child. Now feel what it's like when help is out of reach." The words silenced the room, their truth cutting deeper than the alarms. Staff turned to him, begging, "Please restore the system. People will die." Desperation trembled in their voices, but he did not waver. Then, with a cry that tore through the air, his wife collapsed, her body curling in agony on the cold tile floor. Blood seeped faintly against her gown. The husband knelt beside her, panic flashing beneath his controlled mask, but he did not release the grip on his power. The doctor froze, torn between pride and duty. Seconds dragged like hours. His jaw clenched, his arrogance cracking under the weight of her suffering. At last he bent down, urgency overtaking prejudice, and rushed to her aid. Because now, silence meant death. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then, sharp and clear, a baby's cry cut through the tension, fragile yet commanding, a sound that pierced the walls of injustice. The young mother wept, exhaustion flooding her face, but her arms trembled with joy as she gathered the tiny life against her chest. The husband exhaled, a long, shuddering release of fear. He rose slowly, his phone still in hand, and with a final command, the hospital's systems blinked back to life. Lights steadied, machines hummed, monitors flickered awake. The chaos stilled, replaced by a silence heavy with shame. Doctors and nurses exchanged glances, their arrogance stripped bare. They had seen themselves brought to their knees, not by violence, but by the consequence of their own neglect. The weight of their failure pressed on every bowed head. The couple walked toward the exit, weary yet triumphant, their newborn nestled safely between them. Each step was a quiet act of victory, a reminder that dignity could not be denied. And as the doors closed behind them, a voice lingered in the air. Injustice is not always met with rage. Sometimes it is met with power, patience, and a lesson that forces the world to change. Discrimination in healthcare is not just cruel, it is deadly. True justice means treating every life with equal dignity, because one day, the power you withhold from others might be the very power you need yourself.